Winx, we are the Winx, we are the... Oh, I'm gonna need to see some identification. Be honest with me, guys. Did you know that the Winx Club was getting a live-action adaptation? I had no idea. I never heard any announcement about this, and I'm usually pretty on the ball when it comes to what cartoons of my childhood are being adapted into live action. So the Winx Club was like a Saturday morning cartoon for me. And I won't pretend like I'm a super fan of it. It didn't do anything that necessarily blew me away and left an imprint on my childhood, but it was okay. It was like your basic magical girl show. And I enjoyed it. It's about a bunch of secret fairies who fight witches. It's cool. So Netflix decided we want to adapt that into a live action TV show for our streaming service, which is weird. You know, part of me would think that they wanted to adapt it into a rebooted cartoon. You know, kind of what they did with She-Ra, make that into like a more modern cartoon. Not that I would have liked that any better, of course. But instead they're like, nah, we want to make this live action TV show because we want to get that edgy teenage audience. So I watched the trailer and it's Riverdale. It's Riverdale. Everything is Riverdale now. Powerpuff Girls, it's gonna be Riverdale! But the idea of making everything into Riverdale is to have it so that it appeals to the teenage edgy group. Now, to some extent, I can understand wanting to appeal to the edgy teenagers. From my own experience with that audience, they're a lot more forgiving when it comes to bad writing. No offense, teenagers. Furthermore, they can be a very good market to dive into. They can be super fans that'll keep on watching and creating a community online. And that is very valuable when super fans create a community based on whatever show or comic or movie that you have. So now you might ask, why would the Winx Club, of all things they could adapt into live action to appeal to that edgy teenage crowd? Why the Winx Club? And I think it honestly has to do with the fact that the basic premise of going to some magical school, it's like My Hero Academia, Harry Potter. It's just a very easy, sellable premise because those teenage kids, they're going to school and it just feels a little bit more relatable watching the main characters go to their classes and learn something fantastical rather than something boring. And of course you have some romance being teased between her and this prince of some kind. Prince Charming from Shrek 2 made a guest appearance, which is a ceremony or something going on here. You got this girl in a superhero landing pose controlling her earth magic. Oh my god, selfie! Isn't this so relatable, high schoolers? Now, obviously, the funniest thing that people are pointing out is the casting. As you noticed, or may not have noticed if you've never seen the original show, they casted quite wrong. Now, of course, the Winx Club is supposed to be about teenagers. These are not teenagers, although they're playing teenagers, and that's not necessarily uncommon within Hollywood. I think one of the most popular examples of that would be the first Spider-Man movie. A bunch of adults pretending that they're going to high school. And it is kind of goofy because it's very obvious that they're adults. But I'm more willing to forgive it in the first Spider-Man movie just because a lot of that movie takes place when Peter actually is an adult. It's more like showing you the end of his high school years, and then after that he graduates, and that's when he starts fighting the main villain. But this looks like it still takes place during high school, and it's going to take place during high school for the whole series. So these actresses aren't gonna get any younger as the series goes on. Now, I'd probably be willing to believe some of them are teenagers, but some of them, and I don't want to point any fingers, but some of them just look a little bit older. You know, like either they're in their late 30s or life has been hard to them. Trust me, I understand when life stresses you out, you put on some more age than you're willing to partake. But I do find it hard to believe that some of these actresses are actually the same age as me, considering people all the time mistake me for being 14. But a big thing with the casting is they race swapped two characters. Now, usually when race swaps happen, it's only one side complaining about it, but this is a unique case because the characters that they race swapped were diverse. So just to give you an idea, we got 2 white characters, blonde, redhead. Get that ginger representation, hell yeah. Latina, of course, Asian, and African American. And this is what Netflix's version looks like. White, black. Black girl can't even stand with the rest of them. It's like the Regina George, you can't stand with us, only in this case, it's you can't stand with us! So people on both sides are pretty upset about this, because she is not Asian, and she is most certainly not Latina, although she is curvy. So maybe they thought that would cancel it out? Okay, some updated clarification. So apparently, she is supposed to be Flora, she is supposed to be the Latina girl. They decided to randomly change her name, despite not changing her powers or anything else. They're basically trying to pretend this is a new character and we just cut that other character out. It's BS. I guess that's maybe their way of trying to avoid backlash? I mean, if you're just going to rename the same characters, why not rename all of them? In fact, why not rename the show? In fact, why have any connection to the Winx Club at all if you're going to just make it Riverdale? So yes, it's a very unique case of both sides are angry at a show. We got the people who don't like race swaps angry at the show, and we got the people who want more diversity angry at the show. And this is probably the first time I've ever seen Netflix actually make a show less diverse with their race swaps. And you probably already know, I'm not a fan of race swaps, at least in general. There's some that I can overlook just because I'm not a huge fan of the character, so I just don't feel as passionate about it, but it's the same way with these videos. Sometimes you can tell I'm a lot more passionate about something based on, you know, how excited I get over it and how angry I get, and sometimes I'm just kind of telling you about this thing that's going on and I'm just like, okay, this is happening. It's the same thing for when I'm watching characters getting race swapped. When I really like the character and I'm seeing that they're not being represented in the way that I fell in love with them, in the way that's nostalgic to me, then I get upset about it. If it's a character that I barely even know, I don't really care as much. And you know, considering that both sides are upset about the race swaps, you'd expect there to actually be a lot more dislikes. Not that there's not a lot, there definitely is, but a lot of videos that get as much backlash will be ratioed to death. And I think the main reason why this didn't get super ratioed is because a lot of people just don't really know what the Winx Club is. I mean, I hate to be so brutally honest, but people who knew about the Winx Club, they knew that it existed, but it wasn't really that big of a deal. It was definitely no Avatar, and that's no offense to the fans, of course. It's just that there are a lot of hidden gems out there. There are a lot of shows that people don't really get into. And I'd be willing to believe a lot of people who are hearing about this Netflix adaptation maybe don't even know that it's an adaptation of another show. And I do think whitewashing is just as bad as other race swaps. It's funny because normally when a lot of people cry whitewashing, they're either talking about super old movies where they just didn't have the ability to get it done that way, or they're talking about movies that didn't actually whitewash, but they think it did. It's like a lot of anime adaptations. People, when they hear that it's anime, they assume that all the characters are supposed to be Asian. And, you know, for the most part, that's fair, but some characters in anime are supposed to be different races. Sometimes they're supposed to be white. For example, Alita, they are actually supposed to be white characters, believe it or not. So in that case, it's not whitewashing. And oh my gosh, there's this one Keanu Reeves movie where it's like some kind of samurai movie, something Ronin, and people were mad about Keanu Reeves being in that movie, being the main character, because he looked white. And as it turns out, you know, surprise, surprise, they were really just uneducated about the movie. Keanu Reeves himself is half Asian. He was playing a half Japanese man who was being discriminated against for being half Caucasian. The levels of irony beautiful. But yeah, I do get annoyed when people cry out whitewashing with something that isn't whitewashing, because there are actual cases of whitewashing out there, and you know, there's stuff that both sides can come together and be like, hey, this is BS. The characters are more diverse than this originally, and you made them less diverse. What's that about, Netflix? But like I said, if people don't really know much about the show, if it really is just kind of under the rug, then maybe they will reach the audience that they want to reach. Maybe they'll get to that edgy teenage audience who just never watched the Winx Club and just think that this is a Harry Potter show or a My Hero Academia show. It's kind of weird that they decided to try to adapt a Winx property rather than make their own show from scratch. It almost feels like these days they're just too scared to make something from nothing. But I don't know. Let me know what you think about this adaptation down below in the comments section. Like, of course, if you enjoyed this video. You see my shirt? It's Ellie! She's so cute. I love her. Unfortunately, though, there's so much neck room that you can't really see her when I'm sitting down. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Program restart.